Welcome to Guiding Light, where we help you follow the peace. I'm Jenna Carson,
I'm Sierra Larson.
and we are so grateful to have Chad Thompson here with us today. Welcome, Chad.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Chad is a licensed clinical social worker and the owner of Calming Transformations Counseling. With over a decade of experience, Chad specializes in helping clients navigate anxiety, depression, self-worth, and perfectionism through innovative approaches like walk and talk therapy, cinema therapy, and expressive art therapy. In addition to his clinical experience, Chad brings over 10 years of experience in college level religious education, offering unique insights for individuals seeking faith integrated counseling. Passionate about making mental health care accessible and relatable, Chad blends evidence based techniques with creative methods to empower clients toward lasting transformation. Chad, we find it so innovative that you are doing cinema therapy. So tell us what that is and what you do.
Okay, so cinema therapy is more or less taking movies and helping people relate to it. Movies are a big thing nowadays, and so a lot of people watch them. And taking a movie and having people tell their own story, just like a superhero, or just a character in a different movie, such as Star Wars or Harry Potter, to other franchises like DC and Marvel.
How might that work in the mental health context when you're actually in a session? Do you watch things together? What does it look like?
So, depending on what it is, we can watch like a movie trailer inside of a movie. Like take for example, we just had a great story of Wicked just came out, and there's a story of Alphaba and Galinda or Glinda, depending on which part you want to start in. And the story of Alphaba shows us that she grew up with people not liking her and was really closed off, and over time she became more open, and by the end of the movie we see Elphaba become the wicked witch of the west, or the east, and she is empowered to be herself and to stand up for people.
So, what's one story of working with a client and using this method and seeing transformation in that client's life?
When I was working in a community health center, I saw people of all ages, and people were a fan of a lot of had different fandoms of Barbie to superheroes to um, games like Dungeons and Dragons. And I had one particular client come in who was like a Spider-Man fan, and he, you know, like Spider-Man, kind of doubted his powers, trying to figure out who he was as a person. And we talked about how Spider-Man developed his powers. He got bitten by it, and how he figured out how to use them. And just like that, I showed him like, okay, so Spider-Man tried different things, and then I would ask a question like, what did you do, or what could you do to go into the direction you wanted? And by doing that, he thought of like, oh, I can exercise more so I can feel better. I can read more to learn about things that I want to learn about. And through doing that, he was able to progressively change. So that started his change of becoming who he wanted to be, and he actually decided to become a firefighter.
Wow, that's really cool. So I guess who would be, I guess what's like the avatar of a client maybe that would really resonate with, pun intended, by the way, with
Mhm.
cinema therapy and like who would this be intended for as far as like clinically, why would someone, you know, resonate with this kind of therapy?
Usually, it goes well with people who are more visual, because those tend, someone who's more visual tends to um, watch more movies or TV, YouTube, or go on social media with TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. But it's also tailored towards people who um, have a specific problem with maybe being anxious, or trying to deal with their emotions and doesn't can't figure out how to deal with their anxiety, or sadness. And a good example of working with emotions is looking at Inside Out 1 and 2. With Riley being in the second one, she's really anxious. She kind of leaves her friends that she grew up with or this new hockey team, and by the end, she's trying to impress this new hockey team, and she's doing things she hasn't done before, and she is anxious about leaving her friends, but she kind of works out how to work with both of them. So working with different emotions, anxiety, depression, sadness, and people who are going through changes. There's a lot of movies that are like talk about people growing up and all the changes they had with friends in school. Harry Potter, the series goes, from them being 10 years old to adulthood. But it's pretty universal with helping people. But I would say people who are more creative, artistic, or like love to watch movies or are visual would be the best. But it's truly universal, which I love about cinema therapy. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that because what I heard you say is that one of the benefits of how I understood it was one of the benefits of cinema therapy is you're taking these really big emotions, these really big life situations that people are experiencing and they are kind of wrestling with, and you put it in front of them in a way that they can see it outside of themselves. And what I see
Exactly.
that doing is giving them greater insight into their own emotions, and it's normalizing it. Like if this is normal enough to put on a movie so that everyone can see it and connect to it, then I might not be so different, if
Mhm.
if Spider-Man is having these issues, like my issues are the same, and
Mhm.
being able to really validate and normalize the things that they're experiencing.
Right. I mean, it can be those. Some of the great benefits are, like you said, they're able to take the story and put it out there, and it normalizes it. But one of my favorite things is having the person become their own hero, the hero of their own story.
Mm.
And watching these different movies can give them different effects. Let's take some Marvel example. There is the God of Thunder. He's really strong. He's called Thor Odinson. And if you take a look at his movies, every single movie has "Am I worthy? Can I do this?" Very first movie, he's very pompous, and uh, his father, Odin, takes away his powers until he can become humble enough and shows that he's worthy of that power, and he becomes worthy by the end of the movie. Take another example, like there's Hulk. Whenever he gets mad, he gets up and destroys things. And Bruce Banner's his what he tries doing is not turning into the Hulk, and he does relaxation methods, massages, meditation, karate, or anything to do just not to get mad. But he eventually finds like, okay, I can deal with all this anger, and I can actually help people if I combine them and became the Smart Hulk.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of, like you're saying, being the hero of your own story and also like writing your own story.
Mhm.
I think it's such a great narrative because I think a lot of times we kind of just accept what is.
Right.
And this is empowering people to say, well, change the story. Is this how you want your story to end? Do you want to just be like this? How you wake up, you go to work, you come home, you go to bed, and you do that for the rest of your life. And you say, well, I don't want that. That's not the story I want to tell of my life. Okay, how do we change the story? How do we write a new story? And how empowering that is to one, take accountability and say, this is my story. I get to decide how it ends. I get to decide what the main character goes through. And I also get to, direct it, write it, film it, and star in it. And when you look at it from that perspective, there's so much value in that because now you are in control of your life. You're in control of your life satisfaction. You're in control of, like you're saying, being the hero of your own story. So I love that.
Chad, when you do this work as individuals are becoming the heroes of their own story, do you ever invite them to actually write scripts, not not only in the mind, but physically write a film script of their life?
I do. My bachelor's degree, I actually went to school for film, um, and well, film and communication. But I learned something called storyboarding. So it's kind of a mixture of, drawing it and writing it. So basically, you have a square and you draw a scene in it, and then you write what the scene is. And that show, by writing it out that way or through a journal, they are to make a script, they are actually able to um, visually and kinetically and auditorily do it. And sometimes I actually have them act it out in session. And I'll play the villain or I'll play the other character depending on what it is. And so it's kind of a mixture of using like the narrative therapy, the role playing, to cognitive behavioral therapy, talking about emotions and behaviors, and finding solutions. So it's kind of a mixture of a lot of different, a lot of different things. But writing it is actually a really good way to do your own story besides just saying it. And I like to have them write it, draw it, or write it and actually tell me the story. Because when you're able to, put things down on paper and then recite it, it helps your memory a lot better. Remember those skills or remember those directions that you want to go into, and makes them kind of a happy, healthier person overall.
Chad, I'm so inspired by this work, this really integrative work you're doing. And you're reminding me of something I read in The Body Keeps the Score, sort of the seminal text on how we hold trauma in our bodies. And Bessel van der Kolk was saying that studies show that actually acting out your life story, role playing, doing these embodied practices are extremely healing in working through trauma. And I just love how you're bringing all of these elements together to help people rewrite their stories. Another thing he said in the book is he really recommends theater for especially for kids who don't know how to vocalize what they've been through, but to have to take on another character and connect with the body is a new experience that can be so healing. And so I'm just, as you're talking, I'm making all these connections about how special your work is. So thank you for bringing this to people's lives.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, like, there are specific, therapies called like drama therapy, psychodrama, and improv therapy, which I actually involve those in that role playing, and kind of help to get the client to open up and, kind of relate with the client. So I love how, that, I love that book, and I love how, symbol therapy can help with things with, like you said, a lot of trauma to anxiety, depression, addictions, whatever it may be. I love how it's just universal.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Jenna, when you brought up, you were talking about children and being in drama, what came to my mind was like an adult form of play therapy, like just being able to process something outside of your mind and see it and visualize it and imagine and create new stories. And one thing I use a lot, I don't do a lot of like dramatization, but the one thing that I do that's a little bit similar is the empty chair. I think it's more of like Gestalt. Um, but I've seen just how it's sometimes it can be really difficult, but how it helps us move past this like stuck feeling, the thing that we're not allowed to say in real life, the thing that we feel like we need to say out loud, but we can't. And to have this imaginary world where we get to do and say what we need to do and say to process these things, and creating that space in that world for people in such a creative and safe way just seems like such an amazing way to do therapy. It's just an amazing way for people to process and grow and understand their experiences. So that's amazing. Yeah.
Chad, what role does a client's personal values, including spirituality, play when you're discussing the themes of a film?
Okay, great question. So, there's a lot of people who can be religious based. That could be Christian, Latter Day Saint, Buddhist, Taoist, agnostic. And the thing about therapy and about cinema therapy is taking the client where they're at. And, if they want to involve faith, we can talk about faith themes and then we can do, for example, when someone has a family member pass away or a pet pass away, I like to watch something like a movie by Pixar called Soul. It's like, okay, there is an afterlife, and that can be put into a spiritual context. Even other movies in Marvel called the Eternals. That's kind of about creation and what we, our tests in life, and that'd be kind of a more of a faith-based movie. But the individual challenges each of the Eternals go through can go for, like one of them is very quick to do things, without thinking. Another one just takes a very long time to do, a long process to actually decide what they're going to do. And it's just thinking about having the personalities, like some could be very extroverted, introverted, inverted, or an ambivert, and showing individuals, how people who like there's one with Harry, not Hermione, uh, that she plays the Wallflower, where she's socially anxious, so she's kind of introverted, but over the time we see her come out in that movie. So it's kind of okay, find someone with, find movies that kind of relate to whatever personality traits and whatever spiritual beliefs that people have. And that will kind of help create a better relationship, but actually help the person process whatever they're going through in a better way. And that's kind of why picking films for people is important, based on how you get to know them, and and then just go from there. It's really awesome how film can work.
We hope that any listeners who resonate with this will feel free to reach out to you. Those who may not get a chance to work individually with you, however, I'd like to ask you just for some general blanket recommendations if you're comfortable. For example, I'm curious if there's a film that comes to mind for someone struggling with perfectionism.
Okay, so it's actually there's within Marvel, there's a character called Nebula. And with
Mm.
Nebula, from Guardians of the Galaxy 1, we see her, and she's fighting against, the Guardians of the Galaxy, her actual sister, Gamora. They combat all the time, and whenever she loses, she has to get some new surgery to try to improve her skills. And she's always trying to like have her dad or have Thanos be proud of her, and he never really acknowledges. He's always proud of Gamora, but not of Nebula. And that's her journey of perfectionism, to how she kind of outgrows that, and how she's actually accepted to become a Guardian of the Galaxy by the end of the three films and the Avengers films. So that's something for perfection. And going back to, think about, um, I love like Captain America, for example. He's supposed to be considered a perfect specimen of humans, and he still has his faults. He has a lot of good things about him, but he's still like, can I get this? Can I marry? Am I worthy to marry Peggy Carter? And I lost my friend, and in Winter Soldier, he lost his friend. In Avengers first, Captain America, the first Avenger, he lost his friend Bucky, and then he comes back in the Winter Soldier, and he fights within himself, for what's right and wrong. Go back to Civil War. He fights between the other Avengers, Iron Man's team versus Captain America's team, because Captain America believes, okay, I don't want government stipulation on what I can and can't do, or how to help people in the way that I feel is best. And then Iron Man's like, okay, we need oversight. We need to do this. But Iron Man actually used to be the opposite direction in Iron Man 1. So it's just seeing the difference, of perfectionism, self-worth, anxiety, and depression go throughout tons of these characters.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a recommendation you give for someone struggling with depression right now, specifically?
For depression, I like them to watch like WandaVision. I know it's a very, it's a lot trauma based, but at the same time, she shows how she kind of tries to deal with her trauma, from taking over a whole city to matching what she wants to have her perfect world, to okay, I have to accept things that actually happened. And that's, a good one for depression. And then I also like to show Endgame 1 and 2, or sorry, Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, because it shows the characters like, okay, they lost everything in Avengers 1, and so they all have different levels of depression, to Endgame, where they kind of come together, kind of overcome their depression, and win the day.
Yeah, I love that. Have you ever seen the movie? I know we could just probably sit here and go back and forth on like all the movies that, come to mind. But I watched this movie. It's with Will Smith. I'm pretty sure it's called Collateral Beauty. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
You have? Okay. One of the best movies on grief I have ever seen.
Mhm.
Like, I have to probably watch it again. But probably one of it's coming to mind and it just keeps coming to me. But when I think about cinema therapy, that is the movie that comes to mind. Um, it's just about finding meaning in hard, like in life when
Mhm.
it's hard, and meaning in life and its challenges, and also the joys and the beauty of like life ending and a life having been lived, and finding joy
Right.
and holding space for both. So I think there's so many creative works that just tell the story of the human experience and
Mhm.
that we can connect to and learn from. And um, I love that you act as a guide to them in their hero's journey to be able to recognize those connections and help them to, work through the life challenges and trials that they might be having. So that's incredible work. And yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Chad, for your time today. We're so grateful for you. And how can our listeners find you?
So I have my website, Calming Transformations Counseling. That has some of these characters we talked about has blogs with some of those for resources. Um, but my email, chat@calmingtransformations.com, is the easiest way to contact me. And it's the one I can respond to the easiest.
Thank you so much, Chad. And you said you had, before we started recording, I think, how many blog posts about movies?
Um, about movies, I probably have over 100.
So that also sounds like a great place to start.
Okay.
That's really cool.
Mhm.
Well, thank you again for joining us. Our invitation to you listeners is to maybe intentionally think about a film that could help you work through something, whether it's Collateral Beauty or a Marvel film. Whatever has come to your mind is probably good information for you. So we hope that you take some time to think about your own story and how you're the hero of your story. I'm Jenna Carson,
I'm Sierra Larson.
and we hope you follow the peace.